In this step, we're going to apply the product we wish to evaluate to the top of our aggregate sample at the desired application rate. For this step, we will need, obviously, the product, a pipette and a pipette pump, and our prepared sample in a CBR mold. So the first step is to determine how much product to apply. Product usually goes down in anywhere between 30 square feet per gallon and 60 square feet per gallon. To determine how much to apply, you need to know the surface area of the mold. A 3-inch mold is going to have a surface area of about 0.196 square feet. Divide that surface area by the application rate that you are testing at, the desired application rate, and then convert to milliliters. For this mold, what we're going to do today is an application of 40 square feet per gallon, and that turns out to be about 18.6 milliliters that we're going to apply. The pipette pump is easy to use. You just thumb screw it up and scroll it back down again in order to apply the product. It's in the pipette I am using today is 10 milliliter pipette, so I'm going to fill up to 10 milliliters. And then I'm carefully going to work around the top of the mold. And this will take a bit of patience here, putting in a little bit of product at a time, making sure I'm getting some fairly even coverage on top of the mold. I'm going to work in a spiral pattern around the top of the mold. Working my way around the top. For product that takes a while to infiltrate into the top of the mold, it's going to have to go down at a slower rate in order that you don't have the product running off the top of your mold. Once you've completed the spiral, I like to go back and find obvious spots that I missed with the pipette with this round. And then I'm going to then fill again the pipette up to get the remaining 8.6 milliliters. And then I'm going to carefully go around the top of the mold again in a spiral pattern, trying to make sure that every part gets an equal treatment. Once I reach the end, I'm going to go back and get obvious spots that, again, I missed with the first round, and I'm going to find spots that might be a little bit on the lighter side, maybe indicating that I did not get enough product on there. To try to get a visually even coat of palette of around the sample. Once completed, we let the sample sit for 14 days. For the step, we're going to put the collar on the mold. Finger tight it down. Take our brush. It's pretty important here that we clean off the base of the mold, because in the compaction process there's going to be soil that falls onto the base itself. We don't want to count that and include it in our sample that we're obtaining for the dust bowl. So with that being clean, then we're going to take the sample and we're going to put it into one side of a cookie sheet. We want to put it on one side, leaving enough room for us to tip the sample and bring the braided material into the other side. We're going to put the piece of sandpaper onto our braiders. To do this, it's important that we have holes here that don't line up, because sample will get caught up in those holes. So take a little bit of care on how the sandpaper goes down on here. On the braider itself, we have two 5-pound weights. Of course, put the braider in here, line it up with the bolts for the mold, and then we're going to twist this 10 full rotations. We're going to take the collar off. We're going to sweep off the braided material, tip it, sweep off the braided material, put the collar back on, and then go 10 more rotations. So here's our 10 rotations. Take the braider off after 10 rotations. Put it on the cookie sheet. Brush off the sandpaper. We want to be a little bit careful on this step on how much energy we put into brushing it off. Again, we don't want to lose those small particles because they'll be the first to waft away with any kind of energy. So brush this off to a certain extent. It doesn't have to be perfect. I like to collect the sample that's been abraded onto one side of the mold up against the collar. So when I tip it over carefully, I don't have all the fine particles flying away. You are going to lose some. Take the collar off. Tip the sample carefully. And brush the sample off. Now Now at this point, you need to clear off where the mold is going to sit. You can see on this untreated sample that we have abraded off quite a bit of material, only after 10 rotations. Reposition the mold, reinstall the collar. Put the abrader back on and do 10 more rotations. Soil 10's worth a sample for a treated mold. Typically, if the palliative is working correctly, you should only get about 1 tin full of soil. This is quite a bit more. That's where I take a putty knife and I like to try to mix it up to get some kind of homogeneity to the sample itself. One of the biggest challenges we've had with the test is differences between drops of the same soil or the same tin. And so if I try to mix it here a little bit, that should cut down on that problem and get more repeatability within the tin. That being mixed, then I'm going to take my sample tin. It's just a matter of loading the sample into here. Then I would continue on to the next sample tin. In this step, we're going to take the sample that we abraded in our last step, abraded from the mold, and we're going to sieve it through a number 16 sieve. The purpose of this step is to remove the larger particles that aren't going to be contributing to the dust once it's dropped into the dust fall column that we're going to be doing in the next step, but are going to be contributing to the mass, but not contributing to the dust. So we want to remove those larger particles from the sample to get an accurate measurement of the dust that is in the sample itself. The first part of this step is to, obviously, we're going to remove the sample tape that we put on the tin once we abraded it. I tared a container earlier for this step, so I have the tare weight on it. I'm going to take the sieve, I'm going to place it over the top of the sample container itself. Obviously take the lid off of the braided material. I'm going to take a spatula full of the sample. I'm going to gently drop it onto the top of the sieve. And take a brush. I'm going to sweep off the finer material that was caught on the spatula itself. And then I'm going to carefully and gently sweep the sample around the top of the tin on the sieve itself, sweep it around the top of the sieve so those fine particles can drop into the sample tin. Once all those fine particles are in the sample tin from that batch, I'm going to get another spatula full.
Okay.
So again, a little bit closer look at it. We're going to take about that much of the abraded soil. We're going to drop it onto the screen. Again, we're going to sweep off the finer material, put that down, and then carefully sweep it across the screen with our brush. As you can see, the larger particles that don't pass through, I'm going to make sure that I got all the smaller particles that did pass through, nothing's caught up on there, and then I'm just going to carefully sweep that off to the side. Then we're going to repeat that step until the tin is all sieved into this new tin here, and then we'll be complete. This step takes a bit of time. Be patient with it. Don't put a lot of energy into it because you don't want to lose those finer particles.